Hello, my friends. Let me just say, we're starting out doing one of the things that I probably do just about every week, and that's to prepare a batch of bacon. And the reason for that is actually twofold. Number one, it allows me to have food in the refrigerator that I can go to, have breakfast on the table very quickly, and everyone's happy. Also, it gives me an opportunity to be able to save some of that good bacon grease and to be able to use it as seasonings. When I took my tray out, I realized that I had quite a few potatoes that I hadn't used and I didn't want to waste them. So that means we want to start with getting these potatoes nice and clean. And as we're cleaning them, we can think about what the plan is for this week. Potatoes are an excellent bulk builder. And how can we prepare these potatoes so that we can have them early in the week and maybe even later in the week? So let's think about that. What potato dishes do your family enjoy? My family loves mashed potatoes. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get these cleaned up, get them peeled, get them into a pot so we can boil them, and make some mashed potatoes. Now here's the thing. I want these mashed potatoes to be able to have the possibility that if I have to step away from the kitchen, that then the mashed potatoes are going to be fine and they're going to be stable. So we're going to need to add some ingredients into it that's going to help to stabilize our nice whipped mashed potatoes. And you know what? The good thing about mashed potatoes is that they go a long way and they're very filling for your family. You might be wondering why I put all of the potato scraps into this bowl. What I'm going to do, I filled it and covered all of them with water. Now what I like to do is to take those scraps, microwave them for about 3 to 4 minutes, give them a good boil, and let them cook off their starches and just make a great potato water, because this potato water we're going to use in baking bread. Now remember, the budget may be tight, but the reality of it is that we have to feed our family food that they are going to eat. So therefore, we're really not cooking meals that are struggle meals. We're cooking meals that are delicious, and we're trying to do it on a budget. Now, when our moms and grandmothers back in the day, things were tight, just like they're tight right now. Maybe perhaps not for the same reason, but nonetheless, they were tight. And so because of that, they prepared meals that fed the family, kept them full, and were absolutely delicious. I noticed that my mom and my grandmother, when they cooked, they never had to say, "It's time for dinner," because all you had to do was to walk into the house, have a deep breath, and once you did that, you knew dinner was going to be on the table very quickly, and that no matter what it was going to be delicious. And that's what we want. We want our families to walk in from school, from work, or wherever it is that they've been, and we want them to be excited about sitting down to the dinner table. Let's check our potatoes. They should be ready. Stick your fork in, and they should either just come apart like that. They're good. So I'm going to drain this, and we're going to make some mashed potatoes. This container is pretty large, so I've got to be very careful. Now, in fact, I think what I'll do is just leave them right here in this pot, put it back on the stove, to make sure that all the water is out. Let them just sit for a few minutes, and we'll put some butter in here. And I'm also going to add some cream cheese in here, and then we'll get these whipped up. Before I start mixing those potatoes, I want to make sure that I put these potatoes in the freezer, because then I can pull them out. If I need all of them, I can use them. If not, I can break off what I need and throw it into whatever the dish is. But we'll have frozen shredded potatoes ready to go. I'm going to add a few little knobs of butter. That's about 1, 2, 3 tablespoons, and another tablespoon that I'm going to put in. So about 4 tablespoons, basically about half a stick of butter that I'm going to add into these potatoes. Now they're pretty warm. And I'm going to let the butter melt. I guess I should have probably melted the butter. I didn't. So I'm just going to have to let nature do its thing with it. Putting cream cheese into your mashed potatoes does several things. First of all, it makes your potatoes a lot more creamy and fluffy. It also enhances the flavor, as well as somewhat stabilizes the potatoes so that you can mash them today and you can use them another day. Now let's add a little bit of salt. Not a teaspoon. Less if, that works for you. Now I'm actually going to add a little bit of pepper. I don't have any white pepper, so I'm just going to use black. I'm not going to do a lot. Just a little pinch. I'm going to use warm cream, and we're going to bring all of this together. Put these in the freezer and then take them out. Now I'm not going to do that, but I could. But what I am going to do is that I'm preparing this the day before I'm actually going to eat them. So I think we got enough cream. I'm just going to keep working with these until they get a little bit smoother. See if they need any salt, maybe a little more salt, because I did not salt the water. Potatoes for another day. When I went into the refrigerator, I realized that I had a few things that I really needed to package so that I could use them at a later time. I had those pinto beans that I had prepared, and I had some additional rice that I had also cooked. And so I needed to go ahead and get those into freezer bags so that they could go out. Now, the good thing about having these in the freezer, as well as whatever you may have prepared, is that I can walk in any evening, and if I'm a little frazzled, then I can pull a bag of, say, these pinto beans and a bag of rice, and in just a matter of a few minutes, then I can have dinner ready to go. And so often when I'm being grandma and going to many of the functions that the kids have, I'm coming in and I may not have dinner on the table, but I'm at that point where I can take things out of the freezer and have dinner on the table very quickly, and I love that. Now for tonight's dinner, I went into the freezer and I was looking for something protein. I found this package of, they call it mozzarella rustica, Italian style meatballs. And I was looking at the size of these meatballs thinking, ooh, they are way too large. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take each meatball, I'm going to divide it in half, and make a new meatball. So that we have much smaller meatballs for our soup. So I'll just continue to do that and get these ready to go in the skillet so that they can cook. Alright, so I'm putting my skillet on pretty high because I want it to get hot. And you'll see I have water boiling over here, and I'm going to turn that off for just a few minutes. But what we're going to do is that we're going to put our pasta in there. We want this to come together pretty quickly, so I'm going to actually cook the pasta outside of the soup, and then I'll put it in and it can finish up at the end. So I'm adding those meatballs, and there were 8 meatballs in the package. So I'm just re-rolling, breaking them up, and that's what you do when you're stretching your protein for a larger family. And we're going to get these nice, we're going to let them brown just a tiny bit. Now, you know, sometimes I make them myself, but I didn't do that this time because I had these already in the freezer. I have not added any oil to the bottom of the pan because I think these will have enough oil in and of themselves that we won't need it for now. Now, once these cook, we'll start to add the veggies, and the soup is going to come together pretty quickly. Okay, meatballs done. So we went from 8 meatballs to 16. 16 meatballs. The recipe we're using tonight actually comes out of the Taste of Home magazine that I received on I believe it's pretty much 4 times, it's quarterly magazine, and this is called a slow cooker meatball soup, but we're not doing it slow cooker. We're going to do it actually on the stove. And but for those who may need more time, then certainly you'll be able to throw all of this into your slow cooker. I would cook the meatballs first. You can do that in the oven, and then put them into the soup in the slow cooker, and then let it go low and slow when you have something else to do. But tonight I've got time to be able to do that, so I'm going to do everything right here. Now my meatballs are cooking away, and every now and then I'm just giving them a little shake so that they will be able to cook and brown on all sides. I've turned the fire back on to the pot for the pasta so we can add that. I'm going to add in a little avocado oil, just a bit, about a tablespoon, because we're going to need that for the veggies that I'm starting with. Our meatballs are just, as you can see, are nicely browned. And we're going to add an onion, a diced onion. And I like putting those vegetables in the center. And I like using my ball container in order to keep those vegetables in. I always add a piece of paper towel in to make sure that if there's any excess moisture, that moisture will be soaked up by the paper towel. So we have our onions in the center. I'm also going to add in some celery and carrots. So I'm going to put the celery in, and this is 2 stalks of celery chopped up, and I'm going to add in 2 carrots. And I shredded the carrots rather than just cube the carrots or cut them small dice, because we have a little one that's going to be eating with us, and we're going to need a smaller cut of carrot. Okay. So all of that's in. Notice I'm putting it in with the meatballs because they're already cooked. And I'm going to let these saute for about 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. Now over here, I need about a half cup of small pasta, and I'm using ditalini. It's a 4 cup, and add a half cup. And if I see that I think we need more, then of course I'll add more. But that will work for now. The recipe actually calls for a fourth, but we're going to do a half. We'll let that cook. Let's add just a little salt to that. Just a little. Salt and water. And I'm going to add just a tiny bit of salt to our skillet. And we're going to be adding little diced tomatoes, a can of diced tomatoes. We're going to add this is a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I'm not sure I'm going to use all of it. I think I'm going to actually use the can as a measure and just measure out the same amount. So that I'm following the exact instructions. And if I think I need more, then I'll add more. Oh yeah, that looks good. Now, in our mixture, we're going to need a bay leaf. I'm going to use 2 because, well, there's a big one. Okay, I got a large bay leaf. I'm going to add some Leona's house seasoning. And that has onion powder, garlic powder. I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of that. Okay, let's see if we can get that in. Nope. So I'm going to add in a heaping teaspoon of the Italian seasoning. Now, of course, if I have any pesto, I can always add pesto to this because the pesto is going to pick up all the Italian seasonings as well. And it will also season our soup very quickly. Save us a lot of time. Whew, smells good. All right. Now I'm going to leave that for about 5 minutes. I'm going to check on our pasta over here. Give it another little stir. And I'm looking at the amount thinking, I think I need a little more. I think they got that measurement off just a little bit. So I'm going to add in another 1/4 cup of pasta. So that's 3/4 cup of pasta. So I added in an additional 1/4 cup of pasta. We had already put in a 1/2 cup, so I'm adding in a total of 3/4 cup of pasta, which is a change from what was in the magazine. But everything else I've kept pretty much the same. I have our potato water, and what I'm going to do with that is that it calls for beef broth. And so I'm going to use my Better Than Bouillon beef broth and add to our potato water. We put the top on this so we won't have a mess. I have my Better Than Bouillon base, it's here, and I'm going to add a heaping, I'm going to say it's about 2 teaspoons of bouillon. So I want it to be a really good stock. And stir well so I can try to dissolve as much of it as possible before it gets into the soup. Now if you want to add some minced garlic, you can certainly do that. Toward the end, we're going to be adding some frozen spinach. You turn the pasta water off, because they're only little baby ditallinis, so that's not going to take a lot. And if they're not quite done, they'll finish up in the soup. Make sure I have everything in here. If you happen to have some red wine in your refrigerator, you could certainly add that as well. rinsing our container out. Make sure we get everything in there. And you know, when you're using a bouillon, you have to err on the side of lightness when it comes to salt, because occasionally the bouillon is a little bit salty. So we've got everything in there except the pasta. Now we need to give this a little bit of a taste to see what adjustments need to be made. Actually, the seasoning is very good. I'm going to go ahead and drain our pasta and put it in, then that way I'll know for sure if we have. I can put the top on this, let it come to a boil, and then turn it down to simmer. Now we opened the large can of crushed tomatoes, but we only used half. So because of that, I'm going to take the half and put it in the freezer for another day. Before I served this meatball soup, I added some delicious Parmesan cheese to it, which made it a little stringy. You could use Parm, you could use mozzarella. Either of those cheeses would be absolutely delicious. And you'll notice that there's a little green in there. I also added some collards that I had in the freezer. The recipe actually called for spinach, but I didn't have any. So I threw a few handfuls of collard greens in there, and oh my goodness, they're perfect. And you know, collard greens are a little tough, and they can hold up to this soup. I like having a little dessert for the big guy during the week, and I like to have something that, you know, if I can't make it, then I'm going to find the best that I can. So I purchased an apple crumb pie, and I'm going to do a few little touches to it before I put it into the oven, and it's going to bake for about 60 to 65 minutes. Then we're going to add the crumb topping, which is just going to take it right over the edge. So let's get this pie ready and get it into a 400-degree oven. Now, just because you purchased a pie does not mean that you can't add your own little touches to it. And you know, typically when I'm making a pie, I usually take the fork and make a little bit of an imprint around it to have that homemade look. So that's what I'm doing. I let it thaw just a little bit so that I could do this. And it just makes it look straight out of my pan, so to speak, where I've done it, but I haven't. It's from the store. And you know, that's something to keep in mind. When you don't have time and you want your family to have a little bit of something extra, then just pick up your favorite brand. Now this one just happened to be Marie Callender's, and I like Marie Callender, so that's what we're going to be using today. It's delicious. You don't have to do anything special to it because the company has taken care of everything. Now I'm going to bake it, actually sit the whole thing in my cast iron, because what that's going to do is that it's going to give it a little bit of an extra lip. So if there's any excess bubbling, it won't go into the oven. So I have several extra large bags of rice, and I'm going to vacuum seal. And I thought, well, might as well have you guys here with me, and let's do it together. I thought what I'd really like to do is to vacuum seal these in the quantities that I typically cook. So when I cook during the week, as my bulk builder, I usually cook at least 2 cups of dry rice. So I'm going to measure 2 cups of rice. Okay. And trying not to make a mess here if we can. And I'm going to take my bag that I cut. I always have to have the book just in case because, you know, I'll forget because I don't use it every day. Okay, so I'm going to place our bag in. And when the indicator light goes off, then I know it's ready. Okay, so we have a nice, well-sealed, tightly sealed bag. So I'm going to get that open and pour our rice in. Oh, that's perfect. All right, now I'm going to put this back into the food saver. And when the red light comes on, and once it goes off, I know it's ready. Okay, so now I have a nice sealed bag of rice. So 2 cups. I love using these vacuum sealer bags by Wevac. And the reason for that is because of the fact that when I order them, I get a substantial number of bags for a very reasonable price. So if you're interested in looking for good vacuum sealer bags, then go down in the description box. Okay, and get this into our food saver. Okay, there we go. A nice flat bag. Now this one I'm not sure is as sealed as I. Now here's a tip. If your vacuum sealer bag does not seal properly the first time, just shake the products around, make sure that there was nothing in the way, and reseal it again. Get our rice in there. And what I'll do is that down in the description box, I'll give you the name of the bags that I like to use in my food saver. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more 1 cup. I have another large bag of rice that I want to bring down to smaller sizes and more convenient sizes because I don't always want to open this large bag. So let's do a couple more 1 cups. Okay, there we go. And we're going to use our little bags. I think I'll do 4. That'll be, if I'm using them for a month, then I would need 4. So I've got 1 done, and I'm going to label 3 more. So I'm going to continue working on this rice and getting it vacuum sealed so that I can have it preserved in a much safer manner. And once I finish doing that, we'll move on to the next project. I need a few more bags, and so I'm just going to cut a few. The nice thing about these particular bags is that they come with their own system of being able to pull the bags out. The rolls are inside the box, and I can pull the bags out, measure out what I need, and then cut the bags. All I have to do at that point is to take it over to the food saver and seal the end, and we're ready to continue with our project. Now, I'm thinking tonight I want some chicken and dumplings. So I'm going to turn my fire on, get my pan nice and hot. We're going to add a tiny bit of oil once that's hot. Now, here's the thing. You know, we baked our chicken, and we also had some peas that were left over from last night. So I'm going to be adding all of that into our pan, adding some good stock. And once that's good and hot and bubbly, we're going to drop some dumplings in. Just a little bit of avocado oil. And we're going to add our chicken. So there's one, because I know my dumplings are not seasoned. I think I'll put 3. That's enough. Give this a good stir. Add some of the broth in. I'm going to add some more. Once this comes to a boil, we'll add more. I'll probably add a few more peas. Add 1 more can, because that's our veggie. And give all of this a good stir, because I don't want anything to stick. But as you can see, it's bubbling quite nicely. Now, when you're going to drop biscuits, your liquid must be boiling. And you also want to make sure that you somewhat over season, because the biscuits are not seasoned. And I'm just adding a little extra pepper in. And it's salty enough. The broth was salty. So I'm going to keep it bubbling. And we'll be ready to drop those dumplings in. Now I'm bringing our skillet back up to a hard boil. And I'm going to start to drop our dumplings. And I'm going to tell you about these dumplings. These are not made by me. These are dumplings that you can get in your freezer section. Let me get the package. If you've never used Annie's old-fashioned flat dumplings, then girl, what are you waiting for? Because these are so good. They're nice and thin, and they have wonderful dumplings. I'm dropping these in. You can keep them small, you can break them up, whatever size dumpling you like. And I learned about these actually from Ryan's. If you remember the Ryan's restaurant chain that used to be in business, I really miss Ryan's. But that particular restaurant chain almost always had chicken and dumplings. And I got to talk to one of the ladies in the back. And I asked her, I said, these dumplings are so good. She said, oh, girl. I said, do you make them from scratch? She said, absolutely not. She said, these come out of the freezer section. She told me what to go and get, and I did. And so I am so thankful that I learned that information. Now, the nice thing is that when you get your dumpling, it comes like this. You'll have them, and they have sheets in between, little freezer sheets in between. And you can take however many off you want, kind of breaking mine up. And giving it a stir so that, number one, they won't stick together, but also to make sure, I think that was a little bit of fat right there. I'm going to take that out. Oh, it was. A little bit of skin. I'm going to take that out. Okay. Our dumplings are going. I think I'm going to add a few more. Well, the dumplings are finished. I kind of let the liquids concentrate. And this pot that is nice and full of delicious chicken and dumplings is going to be delicious tonight for dinner. Now, the one thing that I forgot in the process was to add a little parsley, just a good pinch, into our mixture. Get that stirred up. Well, it's time. Let's get this pie out. And it's had its 10 minutes of cooking. And we're going to lift it nicely. Now you notice that because I left it in this cast iron pan, it did not bubble over. But it did bubble, but it stayed within the pan. So we've got our crumb topping ready. Before we close today, let me just say that we're dealing with an awful lot of things right now. We're dealing with the instability as far as our gas prices are concerned. We're dealing with instability as far as our grocery prices are concerned. I've got a few notes here down here. And I thought I would just kind of close out with saying that this is not the time to panic. This is the time to make intentional decisions about what you're going to prepare in your kitchen. Now is the time to make sure that you're looking at where your spending is. You know, are you spending it on things that you know your family's going to be able to use and then you're using them? Or are you still in the mode that you were prior to all of this taking place, where you just kind of buy whatever you want and when? Now, I recognize the fact that we have people who, like our DoorDash drivers, our Instacart drivers, and I recognize the fact that they are trying to make money as well. They're trying to survive just like we are. And so I'm not really trying to knock them out of their money, but I'm saying look at your budget and see what's best for you. Now, I hope you've enjoyed being in the kitchen with me this week, and I've certainly had a great time. And I hope that before you leave, if you're not already a member of the community, that you will certainly take the opportunity to subscribe and to follow us. Follow me often, because of the fact that we are working through getting delicious meals on the table at a reasonable price so that we can stay within our budgets and provide nutritious meals for our family, and that we're happy and comfortable in our home. Now, keep this in mind. You know, we're thinking like Modern Home Economists. So because of that, we make good decisions. We don't drift, we decide. I'll see you soon.